Heavenly Father, we thank you for another day that we have been blessed with. We thank you for the week that we have had and the fellowship that brothers and sisters here have enjoyed. Lord, I'm grateful for my sister's procedure going well and for however many other blessings we've received, more than we can even count. As we continue to study from your word the travels of the people you called to follow you, we pray that we can learn wisdom from their successes and from when they failed, that we would learn to do better in following as you direct. Help us always, Father, to seek and do your will. In Christ we pray. Amen. All right, so just to have a little bit of fun, is there anything you learned either how to do or to make this year? It can be a skill, it can be a cooking, it can be anything. For my part, I, of course, am an old Florida boy who has grown up on sweet tea. I started making my own, and I got it dialed in really well like I like it. Biggest thing is I let it steep for 30 minutes and then chill it overnight, and comes out perfect for my tastes. Anybody else, something you learned how to do this year?
Use a computer.
Using a computer is a good one.
Extremely limited knowledge, but
That's okay. We'll put you to work back there this morning.
I know that the things and letters are on are called keys.
There you go. They are called keys. Anybody else?
You learn something almost every day.
That's good, but you can have a favorite one.
It seems like I learn something every day. Anything significant?
I didn't say significant. I just said something you learned.
I heard they have red light cameras now.
Yes, they do. They skipped over the fact that they're not legal, but they did put them in. All right. Well, last time we went through Leviticus recap, and we did the first couple chapters of Deuteronomy. So we reviewed an overview of the travels of Abraham all the way down to his descendants going to Egypt. They were living in the land of Goshen. From there, they went to Sinai to receive the law. From Sinai, they went towards the Promised Land, which is where the area we saw them last time. Mentioned last week, the world's oldest library is in fact at what we know as Mount Sinai today. There's a monastery there that has a library, and it is credited as the world's oldest. We saw the Israelites have a defeat. They went into their first battle for the Promised Land. They did it against God's will. They didn't follow his instructions at all, and they were beaten back all the way to where they started from. They tried to attack, I wrote eastern, this would be the western side. When you're thinking of the Dead Sea, they were on the western side trying to attack up through the mountains, and that did not work very well. These were fortified territories of the Canaanites who were living there, and they were prepared to defend them. And again, the Israelites were pushed back probably where they started from in kind of the basin area, so down towards not Suez, Gulf of Agua. I'm not sure how that was pronounced. I should have looked that up, and I didn't. But towards that area is probably where they were pushed all the way back to. So picking up in Deuteronomy chapter 2, verse 2, then we turned back and set out towards the wilderness along the route to the Red Sea as the Lord had directed me. For a long time we made our way around the hill country of Seir. So this is after the Israelites have been defeated in battle. This is where they're retreating to. To try and put some context in it, this was a little hard because nothing was really zoomed in. At the bottom of that top map is the Gulf. And the Gaza Strip was the best context that I could put in terms of this map. It would be off to the northwest. So it's off the map, but not terribly far. It's kind of in relation to that. The Israelites are pushed back down. They are south of the Dead Sea. This is possibly the area of Eilat, which is Israel's southernmost city today. It has a population of about 57,000 people. It's a desert climate. The temperatures reach 104 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer, and 70 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter, which is pretty warm, but that's their daytime high. So stays pretty warm there. It is the desert climate. You can see there are mountains. That's a modern picture of the area. So instead of the promised land further south, they've gone further north. They've gone all the way back south here. And the gulfs surround the Sinai Peninsula. So I might call it Aqua, whether I'm right or not. That's just what I'm going to call it because it rolls off the tongue easier. This is the eastern Gulf, and Suez would be the western Gulf with the Sinai Peninsula in the middle. So they've come up all the way that peninsula, and then they're on the right or the eastern side of it as we're looking at a map. Make sure I'm setting the context for these places pretty reasonably well. I think well, anyways. The Lord said to me, "You have made your way around this hill country long enough. Now turn north. Give the people these orders. You are about to pass through the territory your relatives, the descendants of Esau, who live in Seir. They will be afraid of you, but be very careful. Do not provoke them to war, for I will not give you any of their land, not even enough to put your foot on. I have given Esau the hill country of Seir as his own." So the word I'm looking for. I guess I'll go with demographics of this entire area have shifted from the time of Abraham. Now, at the time of Abraham, the Canaanites were here. There were a couple of other tribes that were here. But of course, it's after Abraham that you have Esau, you have Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael's not in this area. His descendants are not in this area. They're over towards Egypt. And you also have Lot. So Lot's descendants are here as well. So things have shifted, and we start seeing these tribes here now that weren't here previously. We've had the years in captivity in Egypt. Of course, we just broadly glazed over the whole years in the wilderness, wandering while that generation passed off, but they're walking around in the desert. There's not anything to look at. So that's why I glossed over that a little bit. But a lot has changed in this area. And God has given land to the descendants of these people of Esau, of Lot. Their descendants are allowed to have these lands, and that's not who the Israelites are sent to make war against. They are particularly sent to make war against the Canaanites, and that's what we're going to continuously see as he's giving these orders. You pass by this tribe because they're the descendants of Esau. You wipe out this tribe completely, and that's consistently going to be the Canaanites. So in Deuteronomy chapter 2, they're passing Edom. Of course, these are the descendants of Esau, which is the closest relatives to the Israelites. Lot was the nephew of Abraham, so he's not even a direct descendant. Ishmael was the brother of Isaac, the father of Jacob. So Jacob and Esau were brothers. This is the closest you have to their patriarch. So these are the closest relatives that the Israelites have in the land. There's a mixed history between them. There are times where they cooperate very well with the nation of Israel. There's times where there's some fighting going on here. And ultimately, Edom is going to fall completely as time goes along because they're not faithful to God. Edom itself does not have full control of the land. We see in the writings that there's the Raphites here. That's these same broad lineage as Goliath, just so we've set some context. When we see these people, that's who we're talking about. They're not a specifically mentioned tribe of Canaan, but they are very present in this area. And we are now, I said west of Jordan. That's not the Jordan River. That's the country Jordan. on your map today, there is a country of Jordan. It's on what we would call the eastern side of the Jordan River. We would call it that because it is, even if you are on the east, it's still the east. So we're on the eastern side of the Jordan. This is the west side of what would be the country Jordan now. And there's a lot of elevation here. I don't think did I do anything? Yes, I did. Good. Better to have a slide explain it than I can remember all of it. In the area of Edom, there's this place called Kibbutz En-Nas, which I'm certainly mispronouncing, but it gives us an idea of what's going on in this area. There's a big copper mine there that is 3,000 years old. So we are talking, I won't say exactly in this time frame, but close enough to throw a stone at. And probably, even if not a mine, they were probably finding copper in the area back then. So that would lead to some industry. That would lead to some people gathering stuff to try and make money. Edom has a very similar language to Hebrew, which makes sense because it would have come from Abraham. The area that's marked on the map here is Busaria, and that would be Jordan. The country of Jordan is very important on this side of both the Jordan River and the Dead Sea. The Taffalia region has about 19,000 people as of 2004. It's 31 square kilometers. And just a random fact, olive farms are about 1.5% of the land in this area. And I mentioned that there's a lot of elevation going on. This is 2,000 to 3,000 feet above sea level. And the Israelites would have started this journey closer to sea level. So they did a lot of going up to get to this area. And that is the Dead Sea on the top side of this map. So as we're getting our bearings, it's our biggest landmark as we're in this part of the book. All right, further in Deuteronomy 2. When you come to the Amorites, do not harass them or provoke them to war, for I will not give you the possession of any land belonging to the Ammonites. I think I may have said Amorites before. There's a very particular difference, the Amorites and the Ammonites. I have given it as possession to the descendants of Lot. So here we saw Esau before, now we see these are the descendants of Lot. They're allowed to have their inheritance, and it's not part of the land that was promised to Abraham, and it wasn't part of the land that was promised to the Israelites. So the Ammonites are descendants of Lot, who of course came with Abraham. The kind of northern boundary of Moab is the Wadi Mujib. They have built a dam here in 2004, which created a lake. Of course, the rain is not the most prevalent here, and the Dead Sea is called that. It is for a reason. It is not fresh water. It is, I think, the saltiest water on earth, or at least in the contention anyway. So there's no animal life. You're not going to survive off the water of the Dead Sea. So they have built a dam here that I mapped, and also to try to give us some bearings to the Israelite territory. There weren't really any good cities I could put in context here, but just on the other side of the Dead Sea, following that arrow, it would be just a little up. It's not a straight line, but Hebron would be over that way. So that was a very key city with Abraham. We saw him a lot in the Hebron area. So we're kind of east of that, but we are further south. This lake that they built now holds over 1 billion gallons of water. So tremendous amount of water. And it mainly goes to the capital of the country of Jordan, which is Ammon. Here's a look. This is a Google Street View that you can pull up on your computer just to get a look of it. You can see on the left side, of course, that's the water. That's a lot of water that they've been able to store. But what's the actual climate like in the area? This is 180 degrees the other direction on the right side. This is exactly the same point. We haven't moved. We're just turning from the left to the right to see what it's like. That's the kind of climate. That's why this water is so important that they have built up today. It's because otherwise that's what everything would look like. And I didn't write down the population of Ammon, but it's big because they're very congregated in their cities here. It's not a sparse population. It's not a rural population because that's what they would be living in, and that wouldn't work very well. So their populations are city dense and have the water brought into them now. Okay. Down into verse 24. Set out now and cross the Aran Gorge. See, I have given you into the hands Sihon the Amorite, not Ammonite, king of Heshbon and his country. Begin to take possession of it and engage him in battle. This very day I will begin to put terror and fear of you on all the nations under heaven. They will hear reports of you and will tremble and be in anguish because of you. So we've reached the end of the chapter, where east of the Dead Sea, we have moved very far north in just a few verses. We've gone all the way up the Dead Sea. This is east of the Dead Sea. It's the area of Jordan. We've seen the Amorites. They are descendants of the Canaanites. They're one of the Canaanite tribes who are descended from Ham, the son of Noah. These are not descendants of Lot or Esau. Those are the ones we've been told to bypass. These are areas that are mainly going to belong to Reuben and Gad tribes, but notably it will include Levite cities. So the Levites don't get a chunk of the land carved out for them. They get cities, and those cities are spread out through all of the land. Why? Because what are the Levites supposed to be? They're the priests. But also, if you actually do a deep dive on Leviticus, the priestly duties cover a lot of ground. Like, they essentially are the doctors of Israel. They're the ones who are told how to treat this and that. They're the ones who are told how to investigate this and that. They're also the judges. They're settling disputes that people have between each other. These are, of course, the cities of refuge, most notably, is what you're likely to hear in sermons and things like that. So these are placed throughout the land so that they can serve all of the tribes, and we are seeing a couple of those cities mixed in with the land that's going to be Reuben and Gad, and also half the tribe of Manasseh is going to be on this side of the Jordan River with them. To now, we've seen the Israelites continue to be led by Moses. Moses is trying to lead them according to God's word. We've seen mixed results in that. Of course, they weren't doing a very good job of teaching their children the law, and they tried to attack into the promised land when God said, no, you're not going in. This is after they've wandered the wilderness, and Moses is still leading Israel at this point as they go through this eastern campaign. So the area of Heshbon, this is north of the Dead Sea, east of the Jordan River. It's between Reuben and Gad. It would border the two tribes, and this would be a Levite city. This was possessed by the Amorites. They, of course, are the Canaanites. And now we're doing everything God is telling us to do. They are following the orders God has given them. They haven't disturbed the people they weren't supposed to. They're attacking the ones they're supposed to. And they had tried to attack up the west when the Israelites were attacking without God. God has brought them up the east. He had a different path in mind for them to go. And I put a callback to slide 309. That was the dam that we saw with all the water. That little arrow points to where that is on this broader scale map. Because realistically, it's so small that it's hard to see it on scale when you're zoomed out. And I wanted to kind of try and place that a little better, make it all make sense. The area of Heshbon, I mentioned before in this class that tells are an excavation site. It's I think it translates to mound. So it's just like this is an area that's built up and they're digging down into it. So it's called a tell. So all over the place in Israel, particularly, you hear the word tell. This is tell something else, tell something else. That's all excavation sites that archaeologists are digging down in to see what they can find because there's entire cities under there that have just been built up with dirt and new cities were built on top of it over the ages. This is the east side of the Jordan River. This is called the Madaba Plains of Jordan. Madaba City has about 60,000 people. This has got an interesting historic artifact in it. So it's not quite in Heshbon, but in this area, this is a noted artifact. It's a big mosaic map of the Middle East that was made back in the Byzantine era. I'm sorry, not even the Byzantine era, the 500 ADs. So it's, I didn't put a picture of it, but it's this kind of impressive thing, and it's a big tourist destination for the area. That just did this big mosaic artistic thing, and it's a big map of the Middle East. The temperature, it ranges 39 to 86. Those are mean temperatures for the year. We get a little bit more rain here. We've seen other places where they're lucky to get inches for the year. Now we're up to 13 inches a year. So the climate is getting considerably better as we're getting further north here. And I just thought for contrast, I would throw in Sarasota's average annual rainfall would be 52 inches, 52 and a half inches. So roughly 4 times as much rain as Heshbon is getting per year. Quite different climates. And we turn now to Deuteronomy 3. Next we turned and went up along the road towards Bashan, and Og, king of Bashan, with his whole army, marched out to meet us in battle at Edrei. The Lord said to me, "Do not be afraid of him, for I have delivered him into your hands, along with his whole army and his land. Do to him what you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who reigned in Heshbon." So there wasn't much of a battle in Heshbon. They were following God's instructions. They wiped out Heshbon. There was no Heshbon anymore. And God is now telling him, you're going to do the same thing to this man Og and to his land of Bashan. In verse 12, of the land we took over time, I gave the Reubenites and the Gadites the territory north of Aroer by the Arnon Gorge, including half of the hill country of Gilead together with its towns. The rest of Gilead and also all of Bashan, the kingdom of Og, I gave to the half-tribe of Manasseh. The whole region of Argob in Bashan used to be known as the land of the Raphites. So that's why I tagged it in earlier that they were there. We're seeing here Moses making specific point that this was their area. Of course, these 2.5 tribes had approached Moses and said, hey, this area is perfect for us. This is what we want our inheritance to be. We don't need to go to the west side of the Jordan. This is it. This is the greatest thing we could ask for. It's perfect for our flocks. It's perfect for our herds. They can do all their grazing here. This is what we want. So Moses has given them their division of the land over here, and that's Reuben, Gad, and half the tribe of Manasseh. This is a more northern area. It's getting up towards the Sea of Galilee. You can see in the north there. We have the Dead Sea. We have the River Jordan, Galilee, and I always forget what that one's called. But I once asked a very odd question of my Sunday school teacher. I asked, what's the name of that one? Because it would be there on these maps. And it's like, well, what is it? Because it's almost never named. And I don't recall it offhand, but the reason it doesn't get labeled a lot is because it's a part-time lake. It's not there year-round. So much like these wadis we've seen, they're the part-time rivers. There has to be enough rain before that lake is actually there. Otherwise, it's just not there. Og, the king here, it says he ruled over 60 cities. So we're talking about a pretty significant built-up structure here. We don't really have any way to gauge the population of these cities, but hey, if you assumed it was 10,000 fighting men from each city, that's an army of 500,000 people that the Israelites were going to have to fight. So that's a pretty tremendous force that they were having to overcome. Again, it would be built up defenses. And Og is a very unusual person, but before I get to more on that, I talked about the tribes here want this grazing land, and I've highlighted a little bit that the climates have changed dramatically. We've gone from that desert climate not long ago, further down the Dead Sea, where they have to build $1 billion, I'm sure it costs more than $1 billion, a 1 billion gallon reservoir just to bring water to one city. That area that was very dry, we've gone to somewhere that gets much more rain, so we've got a much more fertile ground, and that's why we seem to be seeing all these cities here. We see the population here. It kind of makes sense that that's the area, the climate they would gravitate towards, because it would have to be able to support them. And if you're these tribes of Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, well, you think about it. You've wandered the desert. You've walked up these mountains that had nothing. You've gone to the east side of the Jordan. This was probably the nicest land they had ever seen in their lifetimes. Some of them would have been children back in the land of Goshen, so okay, that one probably rivaled or surpassed what they're seeing here. But for many of them, their coming of age, their teenage years, their adult years, this might be the nicest land that they have ever seen. And that had a lot of appeal to them. And it was also something that Og was prepared to fight to defend. And now we're going to see that he was a very unusual person. Well, we're going to come to that anyways. He's mentioned by name because he stands out. Now, in many of these places, we don't see the kings named, but we saw him named, and we saw his territory listed as being much larger than what we see from anyone else. But let's look at Mount Bentel, which is Tel Al-Garam. This is the view from the northernmost area. That's the bottom picture. This is in an area known as the Golan Heights. And that may stick out into your name because that's been a very contested piece of land in our lifetimes. The Golan Heights was not, well, let me be careful about when I'm saying original. For the modern state of Israel, after World War II, the Golan Heights was not part of their territory. They took that territory as part of the Six-Day War in 1967. So talking about how the modern changing of hands has happened, that's when it came under their control. That would be this blue area on the map on the right is the Golan Heights. Actually, all of this is the Golan Heights, but the blue is the section that Israel took possession of. So the area that Israel had occupied was this area in blue, and Golan was another city of refuge. This was one of the Levite cities. So, yeah, we're seeing them scattered throughout the land as they're supposed to be so that the Levites can serve the whole population. And this is a water basin. All the water from here is flowing down towards the Sea of Galilee, which is why we've got the map on the left. So we're talking, this Mount Bentel is up at the red marker. And any kind of water flow is going down south in elevation towards the Sea of Galilee. So, again, you're talking about an area that could definitely support some grazing of animals. And that's why it's appealing to them. So now, this unusual figure of Og. He's in Deuteronomy chapter 3, and we see in verse 11, Og, king of Bashan, was the last of the Rephaites. His bed was decorated with iron, so we have an unusual material. Don't see a lot of iron till now. I think this might be the first time in the Bible we are seeing the metal iron. It was more than 9 cubits long and 4 cubits wide. It is still in Rephaim of the Ammonites. So who is Og? His bed is 9 cubits. Now, various estimates are going to say various things, but we're talking about a bed that is roughly 14 feet in height. That is big. And we're being told specifically that this man's bed was made out of iron and was made to a tremendous size, and that he is, within the general tribal lineage, a relative of Goliath. So he appears to be a very big man and leading perhaps an army of people like that, and that's who God has sent the Israelites to fight. I wanted something to give scale, and I had a really hard time doing this. So the closest I could get to 14 feet was an 18-foot giraffe. So if you took about 1/3 off of the giraffe, maybe the upper neck, kind of where that bump is, and then compare that to the average male of 5 foot 9 inches, which is too tall. The Israelites in this time would absolutely be shorter than that, on average. They were not a people that was very tall. And the average height of the world has gone up. So 5'9" is the average today. I don't know what it would be back then, but 5'6" maybe would be realistic. So we're not talking a foot shorter. I don't want to overstate it. I just want to say that this comparison is perhaps not showing the gravity as much as I would like, but I wanted to kind of get some sense of scale of what we might be talking when the Israelites are fighting here. This is a big deal. And it may also show us where some of David's confidence comes from when he fights Goliath, because he already knew that God could deliver the Israelites from giants. Og is mentioned several times in the Bible, and he's not somebody who may stand out to us as we're reading through other stories of more important characters, but I thought it was interesting to note that he was considered important in Israelite history. So he's mentioned in Joshua, of course, chapter 12, verse 4. He's mentioned in the Psalms, 135 and 136. And there's a possible reference to him in Amos. It's not by name, but it's maybe who it's referring to. There's a dispute if they were Canaanites. There are arguments over who these people were, because not everybody kept these detailed genealogical records in something that would survive for 3,000 years so that we could easily look back and say, oh, okay, they came from this person who came from this person who came from this person. So there's going to be arguments over who these people are. The Bible calls them the Rephaites. And Og is called the last of the Rephaites. So Goliath is not a Rephite, but they are related. They go back to the same common ancestor. And with that, things are pretty quiet for a little bit, but we have reached the end of the life of Moses, who has led Israel through this tremendous time, all the way from the land of Goshen in Egypt. They've started to take possession of the promised land. They fought these early battles. And in Deuteronomy chapter 32, we're reaching the end of his days. Verse 27. Go up to the top of Pishgeth and look west and north and south and east. Look at the land with your own eyes, since you are not going to cross this Jordan. But commission Joshua and encourage and strengthen him, for he will lead this people across and will cause them to inherit the land that you will see. So we stayed in the valley near Beth Peor. So Moses is looking from this mountain, which some people believe now is Mount Nebo. The word means summit. So the Hebrew word here, we're talking about it being summit. Nebo is the tallest mountain in this mountain range. So there's several mountains around here. Nebo is the tallest. It does kind of make a good bit of sense that that would be the one Moses goes up to look over the promised land. This mountain is also mentioned in Numbers 32 with Balaam, of course, the man with the talking donkey who was trying to curse Israel. As he was looking out from one of the mountains, he was mentioned here. This mountain is also mentioned in the Quran. And the reason I mention it is, of course, not because the Quran is spiritually true, but just because it's really old writings. And we are now especially getting into an area where there's multiple sources that talk about some of these places. The Bible, of course, the Quran is a place that talks about some of them. And the Samaritans have their own writings that start going back not quite this far, but we're getting to the areas where they start coming into play. So we start to get a lot more sources as we're going forward. And when they all line up, that does help reinforce the idea, at least from a secular perspective, that these things are true. And of course, this would be the east of the Jordan River. What's Moses looking at when he's looking out from this mountain? This mountain is kind of close to Jericho, and he's got the elevated perspective. It's very possible he's seeing the city of Jericho from here. He may also have seen Jerusalem. He may, or maybe more particularly, he may have seen the Mount of Olives, which would be east of Jerusalem. He would have been seeing the area of Abraham and Isaac when Abraham brings Isaac to the sacrifice and God provides the ram instead. That may be the area Moses is looking at when he's on top of this mountain. So he's looking at some of the most significant places he could ever see. These would be hugely important to him spiritually and historically. This is probably too small to see from the screen because it's too small for me to see from my screen. But this just shows a series of lines of what major cities you could possibly see from Mount Nebo just by pointing in that direction. I think they have a marker there to tell you this. The closest thing I've seen to that, if you ever go to the Orlando area, there's a place called the Citrus Tower. And the Citrus Tower, you can stand at the top of this place that was used to look over all the citrus fields that used to be there, all the orange groves. But on a day where the weather is good enough, you can see Disney World, you can see Cape Canaveral. They've got 2 or 3 other places on there that you can see from this one elevated place just at the top of a tower. So it's a similar concept here, and I say that. I'm sure there's many other places that you can see this. There's that one, 4 Corners or something like that, where you can see 4 different states. Some of you may have been to that. So he's getting a very big overview of some of these areas that the Israelites are going to enter. And that is where Moses will breathe his last. He will be buried, and Joshua will succeed him as the leader of Israel. So in the book of Deuteronomy, on the big picture, we've seen Moses teaching this new generation. We've seen east of the Dead Sea particularly, and we've seen the area of Jordan. We've seen the Amorites and who are the Canaanites. They're not the descendants of Lot and Esau. This is primarily who the Israelites have fought so far. And we've seen the passing of Moses, and now it's going to be up to Joshua to be the man who follows Moses. Can it even be done? And what can he do with that task that is in front of him? And that's a question we get to start getting into next week. Thank you very much.